and welcome to Russ's Movie Corner. My name is Russ, and as you can see, I am sitting in front of my movie corner. I have a Marvel t-shirt on, and I've got 47 Ronin right here. It's time for a DVD review. And this, on the chopping block, well, not necessarily the chopping block, more the entertainment review, is 47 Ronin. Now, this came out in 2013, 2014 timeframe, somewhere in there, 2015, something like that. It was actually finished around about 2014, but because the studio, and no, 2012, um, but they needed to do some reshoots, so they brought Keanu Reeves back, but he was in the middle of filming, and so they had a couple of scheduling conflicts and had some things happen, and so people were like, what the hell? So I remember seeing this thing in the theaters. I absolutely loved it. I thought it was a wonderful motion picture. A lot of people kind of hated it because they kind of put a supernatural spin on Japan and some of the cultures and some of the different things that was going on. But 47 Ronin, what can we say about this movie? Well, first off, it stars Keanu Reeves, Hiroyuki Sanada, Ko Shibasaki, excuse me for that, Tadanobu Asano, Min Tanaka, Kari Hiroyuki Tagawa, Rinko Kikuchi, and was directed by Carl Rinch. This was actually Carl Rinch's first motion picture, was this one. And it had, like a lot of the Hollywood remakes that have happened in the past few years, there's been a lot of studio interference in this one. And it kind of was like they went out and they filmed, and then the studio executives saw the dailies and went, we don't like it. They're like, we want more supernatural stuff. We want more of this. We want more of that. So they brought in another screenwriter to sit down and kind of help put a supernatural spin on the story. Because movies like Avatar, Lord of the Rings, I mean, we're talking, this guy won, 11 Academy Awards. And, and so Universal was like, we want something. We want something, damn it. We want a big supernatural fantasy thriller. It has a lot of special effects and it has a lot of hoop-de-doo-dah and all this kind of stuff. And so the funny thing is, there's a lot of that happens in the Hollywood, and it's unfortunate because it ruins a lot of motion pictures. It really does. And it's kind of sad because in actuality, even though this was kind of that way, where there was a lot of that stuff going on, I still love this movie to this day. I mean, I just watched it in preparation for this review, hence the notes and stuff. And I kind of was like, man, I'd forgotten just how much fun this movie is. Now, you probably have heard some of these names in Hollywood before. And there's a movie right behind me. Let me see here. Where did you go? There you are. The Wolverine. So Hiroyuki Sanada, Rinko Kikuchi, and Tadanobu Asano were all in this film. And because Rinko Kikuchi was the gal that could see the people's deaths, like she could just see the moment of a person's death. And then Hiroyuki Sanada was in trying to remember her name. I don't remember her name offhand. But basically, it was the main gal. It was her father, is who he played. And then Tadanobu Asano was the prosecutor guy who was trying to get in good with the family of Hugh Jackman's, when Hugh Jackman saves that guy during World War II, and he's trying to repay the debt. There's like a prosecutor who's like trying to get some stuff, and that was Tadanobu Asano. Now, another thing that's really interesting is the movie here is called 47 Ronin, right? 47 Ronin. A Ronin is a samurai without a master. Well, one of the characters in Marvel Comics, Hawkeye, during the House of M event, he had been killed previously. Okay, and then when he came back into the thing because of House of M, he basically left and he became a new character called Ronin. And so his daughter kind of took up the mantle of Hawkeye. Interestingly enough, Hiroyuki Sanada was in this movie, Avengers Endgame. And he plays the leader of the Yakuza that Ronin, played by Clint Barton, played by Jeremy Renner, Ronin kills him. So he's part of the 47 Ronin. Ronin kills him. Who knew? Who knew? Fun little tidbit there. I remember sitting in the theater and saw Hawkeye, fighting with him, and then he kills him. And then it's like, Natasha's standing right behind him, and he's like, "You shouldn't be here." And she's like, well, "You shouldn't either." And it's so funny because it's like, I remember going, I know who that man is. I know who that man is. The man that he killed. I know him. He was in the Wolverine. He was in 47 Ronin. I love that guy. He's awesome. Yeah, Hiroyuki Sanada is a great actor. I really enjoy his work and what he does. Now, the interesting thing is, Rinko Kinkuchi plays the witch in this one. And she has heterochromia. For those of you that are, movie buffs, you might remember First Class that in this movie, when young Charles Xavier, played by James McAvoy, goes to the bar after his dissertation and he goes up there to get drinks and stuff, he mentions to the woman that she has heterochromia, which is two different colored eyes. Okay. So just another X-Men connection. I mean, it was just like so many things. I'm watching this movie and I'm going, were the filmmakers fans of X-Men because they hired so many people from X-Men? Yeah, it was dang good. Usually in the 47 Ronin, Lord Kira, played by Tadanobu Asano, has a witch companion, and that witch is more like the witch in, say, Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, where she has more fortune-telling powers. And they do show that scene in this movie, kind of late in the movie. They actually show her, telling portents. All of Japan will be singing and bowing and all this stuff, adoration, blah blah blah. And so, but there's a heck of a lot more, like it's different. It's not your typical 47 Ronin. So if you want that, you need to go find a different version of 47 Ronin, because the one that this version is, okay, is a lot more different than the other versions of 47 Ronin, because again, they wanted a supernatural aspect. Now what's great is that the man who played the original Shang Tsung in the Mortal Kombat, Paul W.S. Anderson directed Mortal Kombat movie back in 95, is Cary Hiroyuki Tagawa. Love that guy. He has been in everything from License to Kill to Mortal Kombat to just, you name it. I mean, he's been in it. And I mean, he popped up in, I was watching 80s television. The man pops up. I'm like, I know that guy. It's amazing. Pearl Harbor was another one. He played the guy who attacked Pearl Harbor. He played the general the Japanese general who attacked Pearl Harbor, and I'm blanking on his name. But that was who he was, and I mean, I remember watching the movie, and I'm going, wait, I know him. I know you. You're Shang Tsung in Mortal Kombat, dang you. Now you're attacking Pearl Harbor. How dare you? No, I'm just joking. But no, it's a fun film. 47 Ronin is a good romp, and Keanu Reeves plays Kai. He's supposedly a half breed. So there was like an English sailor who had a one night stand with a Japanese peasant, and bam, he was the result. And there's a legend about the Tengu forest. Okay, it's a bamboo forest, and it's supposedly where spirits reside. Japan, for those of you that don't know, Japan is a very, very spiritualistic culture. Shinto was built on spiritualism. They do believe heavily in ghosts. That's one of the reasons why like movies like The Grudge and The Ring and that kind of stuff are so prevalent in Japanese culture, is because Japanese, for them, that is a mentality. That is something that is like, okay, this is a mentality that we have. And if you've ever seen the video game series Fatal Frame on the PlayStation 2, that is very much inspired by real events, okay? And they do that, okay? It's like that is their thing. Spiritualism is a very big part of their thing. Spirits and demons and all that kind of stuff, very prevalent in Japanese culture. Okay, so that's one of the things that they kind of like capitalized on for 47 Ronin, is that they brought in a lot of that spiritualism and mysticism and stuff like that. So Kai, as a baby, he was abandoned in this forest, and these Tengu, these demons, took him in and trained him in their demonic ways. Okay, and he escapes, and he runs into Lord Asano, who is like this wealthy man in feudal Japan kind of thing. And basically, um, he brings him into his house, and kind of you know uses his tracking skills and uses some of his different things to go fight a beast, and he ends up saving a samurai. And the samurai kind of feels shame that this half breed, this evil half breed, who's kind of shunned, lives out in a hut. Um, is man, you saved me, you half breed, man. I'm ashamed, but everybody hails him as being the guy that Kai saves. I don't remember his name exactly, but he ends up being like lauded as this champion, okay, because he slayed this beast. And so they were kind of like, cool. And so he was supposed to fight in a tournament, and this tournament is hosted by the Shogun, played by Kari Hiroyuki Tagawa. Okay, and then Tadanobu Asano's Lord Kira, of a rival province, is like, I'm gonna get me some, I'm gonna go get me this girl that's Lord Asano's daughter, and I'm gonna get this realm of Akko. That's where Lord Asano rules, and I'm gonna become the master of Japan, basically. He has big aspirations, and he's using this witch. And so during the time that they're doing this hunt, um, Kai kind of notices that there's this white fox following them with two different colored eyes. That's the witch with the heterochromium. And so he, when the tournament comes, he sees a girl with two different colored eyes, the exact same two different colored eyes as the white fox. So he brings Oishi, who is played by Hiroyuki Sanada, aside, and he goes, dude, there's a witch here, okay? And we need to be careful. Oishi's kind of like, a witch? You're stupid. You don't understand. And so he runs off, you know. and um, this big tournament is happening in Akko, and Lord Kira's like, "Here's my champion," and this big guy walks out in silver samurai armor, and it kind of reminded me of the Silver Samurai in the Wolverine. Um, Only the Silver Samurai the um, in that movie was a lot bigger, but that version of the Silver Samurai is kind of what reminded me of like the comic version of the Silver Samurai, because he's in this big silver armor. He's just this big imposing man, and so Mika, who is Lord Asano's daughter, is like, "Father, who's that?" And Lord Kira's like, "That's my champion." And then she's like, "Uh oh, like this is not gonna be good." And so the fox goes and basically bewitches and poisons the champion, the guy that Kai saved. And so Lord Asano's son notices, and Kai kind of calls Kai over, and Kai comes in, and he's like, "What are they gonna do?" He's like, "He's been bewitched. This is the work of a witch." And he's like, "Crap." So then he looks up at the armor, and he notices the armor has a faceplate. So he's like, "Okay, I think I can get away with this." So he puts on the armor of the samurai and goes out to face the champion. During the bout, the hat gets knocked off, and it's revealed that it's Kai and not the champion. And so, as he's, as is wont in Japanese culture, he goes down like this, and, to show reverence before the shogun. And the shogun comes out, and he has like a little fan, and he picks at his chin, and he goes, "You are not samurai." And then he turns around and he goes, "Kill him." And then, like, right as the big silver samurai from Kira's province is going to cut off his head, Mika jumps in and, is basically like, "If you're going to kill him, you're going to kill me too." And so basically, um, this shames Lord Asano, that his daughter is basically throwing herself before lower than a peasant, like he's basically a slave. And so she's, you know, Mika's all distraught because she loves Kai in her own way, and she's like, I don't want him to die, and basically, um, Lord Asano steps in and goes, "I am so sorry, my lord," to the shogun. My fault. You know, my champion got drunk, and I guess this guy felt the need to take his place. Okay, and I apologize. It's on me. And so the shogun basically says, "Okay, strip him of his armor and beat him." So then they go in and they strip off their armor. They strip off the samurai armor, and then the guys start beating him with the wooden swords that you would use for practicing. Okay, and I mean they're like whipping the shit out of him, and then finally one of the guys comes in and he's like, "Hey," because I mean they're getting more fierce, like they're literally just beating the shit out of him, and then the guy comes in and is like, "Hey, stop, 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 stop." He's like, and he kind of leans down and he kind of grabs onto Kai's shoulder and he's like, "I'm sorry about this," and bam. So then, like that night, the witch has Lord Kira pledge himself to her. Okay, and what she does is she takes the hate from his heart and turns it into a spider, and that spider then goes in and poisons the mind of Lord Asano into thinking that Lord Kira is taking advantage of his daughter, i.e., raping her. Okay, it's PG-13, so they're fully clothed, but she is reaching out to him, and she's like, "Fathers," and he slashes Lord Kira across the back. And what you find out is that Lord Kira was not sleeping with his daughter and was just laying there asleep in his house. And so he ends up shaming himself. He has to kill himself because the shogun's like, "I can kill you, or you can take your own life and keep your honor." And then so Oishi comes out, the other guys come out, they kneel down, and he basically says to Kira, the Shogun basically says, well, she's like, may I be allowed to look over my lands until I'm wed? And then the Shogun says, I've already taken care of that. And Kira gets off his horse and he walks over and he basically takes her. And then Kai gets sold to these people. They call it the Dutch Island. It's basically just a bunch of ships that are all like kind of tethered together. And then he turns to his man and he says, I don't trust Oishi. Throw him in jail for a year. And so a year later, Oishi's released from prison. He goes back home and he sits down and he goes, what happened to my men? They're like, the ones that stayed were slaughtered, the ones that didn't left. So he's like, shit. Like, what of, Lady Asano, Mika? And they're like, she's gonna be married in, her time of mourning, because she was given like a year to mourn, and like a year and some odd time to mourn, and so it's almost time for her to get married to Lord Kira. And then he's like, and what of the half breed? And they're like, well, they took him to this Dutch compound. So he goes, get me 3 horses. And so he walks out there, and he takes his son, and he goes, I want you to go find as many of my father's men, or of our Lord's men, okay, the samurai that are now Ronin. I need you to find them, bring them here, or bring them to this place, okay? And then he walks over to his wife, and he says, I want you to know that I'm only doing this to protect you, because what I'm doing is illegal, and they could rope the whole family into it and execute us all. So this is just going to be on me, and just know that no matter what, I still love you. Okay? And so he leaves, goes, and he finds Kai fighting with this giant who's got like a big ball and chain. So he's got like a ball and chain in one hand, and it's connected to a little sickle in his other hand, and he's like throwing it around and like knocks a guy out in the side, and like knocks over a post, and completely missing Kai most of the time. And then Kai finally just cuts his head off. And then Oishi gets thrown in there with him, and so then they start, they start talking, and then finally he like wakes him up, and because he's like, Kai, he's like, Mika is about to get married to Lord Kira. We need to stop it. And then he's like, and then he kind of kicks him off, and he's like, do you understand me? And then he kind of flicks the sword like this, and then he brings it up, and then he grabs it like this, and then they start fighting, and then it's like Kai like runs in and like goes to stab Oishi, and Oishi like moves out of the way, and then they stab one of the guards who's right by a little ladder, and then they start climbing up and they escape from the ship. It's a pretty fun scene. And then in the next, and then so they go in and they find a whole bunch of men, and they're like, hey, we're gonna, he's like, look, our Lord was, unjustly murdered, okay, because of circumstances that were beyond our control. We need to go for Akko's sake and for our Lord's Spirit's sake. We need to avenge him. Okay, so we're gonna go take the fight to Lord Kira, and we're gonna go. And then the guys are like, yeah. And then he tells one of his men, he goes, you and another guy, you're gonna go and you're gonna try to find as many of my father's men as you can. Okay, go find them. So they go off to find men, and they go off to look for steel. Well, it turns out that Lord Kira has pretty much every single town on lockdown, and he's basically taken all of the men that used to make, plows and could make weapons are now out. And so basically Kai says, we can go to the Tengu forest because that's where I'm from. They're going to test us, but we can get weapons there. So they go to this forest, they go in there, and, Kai basically says, I'm only here because we need weapons. And the guy's like, yeah, right. And so they finally get to this one point where, like, Oishi is being tested in his own way because he sees his men come in, and he's like, "What are you doing here?" And then they all start drawing their swords. He's like, "No!" And then they all start dying, and he's like, "Draw your swords, draw your swords." And then basically like this. Meanwhile, this whole conversation is happening between the lead Tengu demon and Keanu Reeves, Kai, and they're kind of like circling this sword. And then at the very end, um, "Well, you can have the sword if you can get to it before me. See if you remember your training, and see if you can get to the sword before I do." So they go, and then it's like Kai like flips up the sword and like, and he's like, "Very good." He goes, "Oh, by the way, your friend out there passed the test. You didn't pull his sword." And so then he goes back, and you see like everything disappears, and he's looking around, and because like the whole time he's like seeing his men dying, and he's like, "What the hell?" And then it's like everything disappears, and the men are still bowed on the ground, and there's all these like really cool looking samurai swords, and he's like, "Pick them up." He's like, "Let's go." So they grab all these swords, and they're heading out, and one of the guys, he's like this big guy, and he's real big fat guy, and he's like walking along, and he's like, "So what do these swords do, Kai?" And he's like, "Well, what do you mean?" He goes, "Well, I mean, I'm a big strong samurai. Like, what are these supposed to do?" And so Kai just walks up to a tree branch, and he goes, "Shing." He goes, they cut. So then the guy walks up to the tree branch, and he pulls it out, and he goes, "Tink." He's like, "I think mine is broken." And so then you find out that a guy that he sent to go find out about Lord Kira, who was supposed to be going to his ancestor's shrine, gets bewitched into leading the men into a trap. So then they come back. The big fat guy dies, and he kind of makes up with Kai, and the guy that he saves early on in the film actually makes up with him and hands him his own samurai sword and says a true samurai has two swords, because he notices that he only carries one. So he gives him the second sword, and then he gives Oishi gives his big speech. "We're gonna go take the fight to Kira, and let this record show that we're doing this." And this was kind of the coolest part of the film, is they're writing their names in Japanese, okay, in calligraphy Japanese. It's very beautiful. And then they take out their sword, and then they press their thumb on the sword, and then they press their thumb into the thing. So it's like it's a bloody thumbprint, similar to like say the John Wick series, where I think it's John Wick right here. So the John Wick series, where he where when you push your thumb on that little spike, and then you put it on the side of the marker to show that you're to show that either the debt is owed or the debt is paid. And that's kind of reminded me of this movie when I first saw it. I was like, when I first saw John Wick Chapter 2, and I saw the marker for the first time, I was like, it's kind of like that movie, like 47 Ronin, I think it was, where they kind of like they press their thumb on the edge of their sword, and then they press it onto the paper, and it leaves that bloody thumbprint to kind of show that it's like, hey, we're out here, we're doing this, and we're gonna, kill. And so they assault Lord Asano, or they assault Lord Kira's keep. They end up killing everybody, and then Oishi fights Kira, and Kai saves Mika and fights the witch, and that's kind of the ending of it. And then you see, him standing out there, kind of Conan style, with Kira's head in one hand and his samurai sword in the other. Kind of like, it is over. And then of course the shogun is like, I forbid you to do that, and he's like, I understand, but honor requires that our Lord be avenged. And if we're not going to do that, then we don't belong even as Ronin, because that means that we have disobeyed our master. And so they end up all committing ritual suicide except for Oishi's son, because the shogun at the last minute says, "Stop." And he's like, so and so, Oishi's son, come. And he's like, we will not lose your bloodline, Oishi, because your bloodline is honorable, and your son will serve Akko just as you served Akko. And I thought that was a pretty neat thing. And so they said that, like, and then at the end, there's a little placard that says, the every year on December 14th, thousands flock to the graves of the 47 Ronin, to honor their memory. This story was inspired by, or this movie was inspired by their story. And so I loved it. I thought it was great. And I think that anyone who's maybe ever seen it, give it a second look. If you're kind of like on the fence about it, give it a second look. An honest second look. Like, take your mind out and just go in fresh and just watch it. I think it's phenomenal. I absolutely love this film. And I think that a lot of people will once they can actually see it. I realize that it's not the director's original vision. I realize that it's kind of like there's some studio interference and all that kind of stuff. But I don't care. To me, it's entertaining, and I absolutely love it to death. So, have you seen 47 Ronin? Drop a comment below. Okay? Let me know what you thought of it. Because, honestly, I absolutely love it. I thought it was a great film, and I think it's, to this day, one of the best films. So, yeah. And I know that, with the success of Avatar, it got changed around. And they gave Kai a much bigger role in the ending, because in the original, I guess, draft of the screenplay, he wasn't there. But they were looking at star power. Kind of like the movie The Great Wall with Matt Damon, where it's like originally it was just supposed to be all about the people fighting in China, and there wasn't supposed to be anything else. But they kind of added in, some other people who were, bigger names in Hollywood to make a little bit of a draw. So maybe next time I'll actually do The Great Wall, because I have it up here somewhere. So anyway, this has been Russ's Movie Corner, and my name is Russ. Smash that like button, hit subscribe, drop a comment. Let me know, have you seen 47 Ronin? What did you think of it? And, kind of leave some comments and, say, hey, this is a movie I'd love to hear your take on. And I will, if I have it, I will review it. If I don't, I will take a look at it and see if I can get it. I don't have a lot of money right now, so I'm trying to do some things. So I may not be able to do it right away, but I will try to get to it at some point. So, thank you for watching, and have a great day. We'll try